Welcome, seers and assassins, to the blighted corners of the mortal realms, because today we are continuing our exploration of the Skaven faction with their debut battle tome in 4th edition, and we're going to fill out our roster of the remaining 2 great clans that are playable. This isn't to say that there aren't more clans of your own devising and stuff like that in the lore, but rather these are just the big power blocks that exist within Skavendom. Those clans being the clans Eshin and the Masterclan. 2 forces that represent overall an incredibly small percentage of the overall Skavendom, but have the most oversized influences in actively directing its course. And it's that duality of being the smallest mouse who ever roared, but being the loudest mouse who's ever roared is what makes them both exceptionally interesting in their own ways. They frequently work in tandem, the clans of Eshin and Masterclan, and it's their job to basically intuit and then implement the will of the Great Horned Rat by spell or by blade. And so today we're going to explore the clans Eshin and the Master Clan, the units that we get for each of them, which I'll state up top, there's not very many war scrolls here, but more to the point, having a discussion about how they fit into the overall hierarchy and power structure within Skaven, because honestly, the most intriguing things about them tend to be off-table. They have some of the coolest, most effective units in the game, like Graciers and Assassins and all these kinds of stuff. But realistically, when you talk about like the overall influence in guiding Skaven activities, much of their power is stuff that you'll never see on the battlefield. Now, one thing I like to add up top before we jump in, if you're interested in this video or anything Skaven, please consider using any of the affiliate links in my link tree down below. I have a whole bunch of links next to the name of the store. You'll see how much you save. And every time you use those links, big or small, it puts a tip in my tip jar that directly supports me, my wife, our cats, everything, and I'm just so thankful for each and every one of you who does. I also want to throw a shout out to Goonhammer, an awesome online resource, tons of blogs and articles from everything from how to play, like tactical guides, painting tutorials, model reviews, everything. If you're looking for some information that has to do with Games Workshop games, it's on Goonhammer. Okay, so for those of you who are new to AOS or Skavendom, we're going to tackle these 2 clans individually. And I thought it would make the most sense to put them into one video because there's not really enough meat on the bone for them individually, but they work in tandem so well and so much that it makes sense. And also I want you to keep in mind that all the things we've talked about Skavendom before in terms of, you know, their duplicity, their desperation, their maniacalness, the fact that all of them think that they're the main character in this epic story. All of that is true for these Skaven too. And so we'll kick this off with the clans Eshin. These collectively form the Assassin's Claw of the Skaven faction. They are essentially part of the Skaven ecosystem that goes back to the phrase that we mentioned in video 2 of this series, that Skavendom operates as a tyranny moderated by assassination. The clans Eshin make up a good majority of those who do the assassinating. Because sure, a lowly clan rat will kill their pack leader themselves, you know, just to get that seat and that power. You don't need to hire an assassin for something that low level. But when we're talking about the scale and the magnitude of influence, the power, the resources, and paranoia that, say, an arch warlock of the clan Scryer has, he's going to have some formidable defenses. He's going to have brainwashed Skaven, maybe an armored entourage of storm vermin that they bought from the clan's Verminous as we explored. Like, my point being, no one's just going to walk up and kill this guy like a clan rat could to his pack leader. So when it comes to these assassinations of bigger movers and shakers within the Empire, you do what any enterprising Skaven does. You hire someone who's already good at that thing. And this is where the clans Eshin come in. Skaven who want to become master assassins within the Eshin, clans and satellite ones, begin their training in Ulgu. When this tradition began has been lost to time, but basically it's in Ulgu that Skaven learn to cling to shadows and move silently. They also gain skills in how to misdirect, remain undetectable, important skills that earn the clan money, like how you map out enemies, how you track things. But it's from there that the structure of Eshin becomes very nebulous. There's a sense that each assassin is purely out for their own benefit. They'll do anything for money, prestige, etc. But at some point, that does funnel back into the clan. because they do have a well-cemented power base. They have a seat on the big Council of 13. They have recruits, trainers, ambassadors, ways that authority and job opportunities are disseminated throughout the clan. And so we don't get a whole lot of insight into what that structure is, but I think that it would lend itself really well to a novel. A book came out a while ago for the Gloomspite Gits called Bad Loon Rising. It's like it follows the story of a Grot and his Troggoth companion basically on their rise to power. It's a really funny and entertaining story. It gives you great insight into how the Gloomspite Gits are. I think that Clans Eshin would immensely benefit from something like this, where it's not necessarily indicative of, how all the clans operate, but some insight into how orders are given, where people are sent, what the training looks like, what the different skill sets are. Like, all of those things exist in Bad Loon Rising, and this is certainly one that I believe, would benefit from a book like that. Show me a rise to power, even if it's not, prescriptive of the entire faction. The way one clan does something would be very helpful to us understanding. Because at the end of the day, this is going to be one of the most foundational clans that has ever existed, and are woefully underrepresented on the table. Because the truth of the matter is, as long as 2 Skaven exist, one is going to want the other one dead, and as long as 3 Skaven exist, one's going to happily kill another for money. And so some manifestation of either the skills or the goals of Clans Eshin have always been throughout Skavendom. And at some point I'm sure they'll shine a spotlight on it more and we'll get more information. But hey, do you know who the #1 customer of the Clans Eshin are? Well, it happens to be our next subject, the Masterclan. In fact, it's often thought, the book points out, that Eshin sort of acts as the militant arm of the Masterclan, but that is not true. They're very distinct orders and structures. They just have a fantastic working relationship. In business speak, this is the value of good B2B partnerships. Well, the Masterclan exists outside of the traditional rabble of power blocks that fight for control in Blight City. In fact, they don't have a permanent seat on the Council of 13. But they exist at this tier of leadership because they're clearly touched by the Great Horned Rat, because these are his prophets, his seers, and mystics. The Masterclan is, of course, the Grey Seers of the Great Horned Rat. And in a society where might makes right, having access to latent magic, which makes them distinct amongst all Skaven, and a way to justify that you are the one who knows what the Great Horned Rat wants, that's an unfair advantage. Right? He's got a built-in social proof. I'm different, so when I say I know what the Great Horned Rat wants, I know. How can you argue with that? And then if someone challenges that, I can demonstrate that power in real time. And these Skaven use that unfair advantage to rise in power and stature, acting as army leaders, counselors, courtiers, whatever they can to kind of weasel their way into the power structure. Then, when they're kind of situated nicely, they'll seize power and direct the course of events, either by tricking their opponents, subverting them, hiring assassins to kill the right people at the right time. Basically, they are the ultimate wild card, but ones that have been clearly blessed by the deity of the Skaven. And it's difficult to express how disproportionate their influence is. Like, Grey Seers are an extreme anomaly amongst Skaven. They're very rare. And then some of them just die because being a Skaven is dangerous. So if you make it to the point where you're an active Grey Seer, you have to know how to play the game from very early and be very cunning. That said, there is no Skaven warlord who would not like to have a Grey Seer with them, and that's how they kind of get their hooks into this power structure. All Skaven would love to have a natural wizard with them, so that even if the contraptions by Scryer crap out on you, you still have some magical power. All Skaven want to think that they are doing the will of the Great Horned Rat, although how that manifests might look different from clan to clan. So having someone who says, I know the will of the Great Horned Rat, and you're doing good, Clawlord, solidifies that in their mind. Grey Seers can make competent and capable generals. At least they have the force of character to get things done amongst Skavendom, which means that they kind of separate themselves as leaders from the common rabble. And of course, we only have a couple units that either include Grey Seers or, that have that keyword. Most of the greatest stories we have from AOS feature Grey Seers in some capacity, whether being advisors or leaders themselves. And at this point, I want to transition more into talking about the units that you and I can bring to the table. I've tried to give you a picture of what these things might look like off the table and kind of highlight their exaggerated influence for the sake of the fact that they don't have a lot of units to put on the table. But we will cover what lore there is and tackle them one at a time, just as before, starting with the clan's Eshin. And for this, we only get 2 units that give us insight into the mysterious structure of the clan. The lower tier is that of the Night Runners. Strong Reagan-era models that have just stood the test of time, I guess. But more seriously, the Night Runners are Skaven that are formed into kill packs, and these are the ground troops of the clan's Eshin. They move as a single mass. They're trained, again, to cling to the shadows or the edges of the battlefield. They're able to throw knives of all different kinds, have crude weapons, and basically their job is to look for weak points in the enemy lines. But it's important to remember that they are not chaff. Just like all the other great clans tend to have their own elite version of infantry, so one step up from clan rats for Pestilens is the Plague Monks. It's kind of their unique personal infantry. Well, this is theirs for the clan's Eshin, but they're actually trained to do things. They have skills and training that they got from Olgu, services that they've been hiring out. These are actually the workers who do a lot of that scouting and what I assume is the general income generation of the clan. In fact, you rarely see whole armies of kill packs because a lot of the work that Night Runners do happens off the table. Espionage, the low-level kills, recon scouting. But on the table, they operate as a knife of the Skaven aiming at the enemy liver. Now above them is the only hero option we get for the clan's Eshin, and that is the Deathmaster. Their lore says that they're oftentimes trained by the clan's Night Lord themselves, which, from the context, I take meaning the actual leader of clan's Eshin, like how the Arch Warlock is the leader of Clan Scryer. In Eshin, it's called a Night Lord, which I'd love a model for. Anyway, Deathmasters are trained assassins that exemplify the clan as a whole. When you see assassins in game, this is who we're talking about. They're able to slip in unseen, blend in with the masses of Skaven or the shadows within the walls or terrain, and then they lash out with incredible martial skill, looking to wipe out a target. And they all have this kind of mythos around themselves. So, for example, some might create a rumor that I'm able to climb, smooth walls, meaning there's absolutely nothing to grip onto. Others might be like, I can slip through a keyhole, whatever it might be. And so this is how they're able to build their own rapport and reputation and be able to charge more for their services. And unfortunately, that's all the insight we get. So like I said, I would love a book on them. I think we have enough to make that book interesting, but plenty of room to explore new ideas. And then we'll transition over to the Masterclan, and there's really just one unit to talk about here, and that is the Grey Seer. Albino white fur, curved horns, and natural access to magic, with a penchant for murder make these Skaven stand out. They often offer their services to clans as advisors, or just wizards that'll accompany their warband into battle. And the Grey Seers have been directing the course of Skavendom for eons. And the reason is, the Great Horn Rat, supposedly, speaks to them of opportunities, of battles, of riches, and spoils. And so the Grey Seer listens and then relays these messages into action via the clans that they align themselves to. Few Skaven leaders, from Claw Lords to Arch Warlocks, will turn down the aid of a Grey Seer because they're just so dang useful. Now, one thing to mention is the mount that the Grey Seers can often be seen with, and that is the Screaming Bell. And this book gave me some insight. I don't remember this being in the last battle tome, but I loved it. I thought it was interesting. Essentially, the Screaming Bell is an original design by the clan Resnick, right? This clan has Screaming Bell, TM. And they have a specific process for designing and molding these bells. And it basically laces them with arcane power. Then they sell the bell to Grey Seers who defile them and corrupt them for 13 days, before mounting them onto these scaffold carts. And essentially what a screaming bell does is it projects the power and the authority of the Grey Seer riding it. It turns the endless masses of Skaven around them into a channeled and focused force that hurls towards the enemy. At the same time, as the magics are invigorating and directing the Skaven, they're absolutely demoralizing the enemy because the sheer power and, I don't know, chaotic influence of the rings of this bell just kind of like shatter people's morale around them. It makes it for an interesting mount. I had read before that it has like a specific clan that makes them all. Now, we do have a named Grey Seer in the form of Thanquol, who rides atop his personal horror known as Bone Ripper. Now, folks, I'm going to be honest with you. I held off on doing a Thanquol and Bone Ripper lore video for the longest time because I thought this book, going into 4th, was going to have more information regarding him, but it didn't. I know that Thanquol is a very cool character from the old world and the personal favorite of many lore nerds. He has a long history, specifically with the Duarden Gotrek, who also exists and has been brought forward into AOS. But they haven't really done much with that relationship. That said, Thanquol is probably the most blessed of the non-demon Skaven. He has these warpstone-tipped horns, a near unstoppable killing machine that works underneath him, and he's able to unleash magic like no other Skaven, like huge vortexes of warp storms and stuff like that. But there's not a ton of information about what he's actively doing in this battle tome beyond that. One fun fact that I did think was interesting was that he has a ton of ties to the clan's Molder specifically. Because Bone Ripper gets so beaten up and chunks of him will be blown off during battle, Thanquol needs the surgeon warlords of Molder to basically remake him, repair him, fix him up. And this has gone on for so long to the point where no one's really sure if any pieces of the original Bone Ripper still exist, but they kind of just keep slabbing new things onto him. And I absolutely love it. And so as clans rise and fall in favor, some Molder groups will come and work under the banner of Thanquol specifically, and that's actually why we get his own army of renown in the Skaven book. If you haven't seen that, it's like its own army structure and everything. It's called Thanquol's Mutant Menagerie, I believe. And it's him bringing these forces directly to bear. Now, I do want to do that fuller video about Thanquol and Bone Ripper, but I need to learn more about him before I get roasted rightfully in the comments. I was really, like I said, hoping this book would fill us in more on his antics in AOS specifically, but we didn't really get those. I compare it to other heroes, like Gotrek got a very big release back into AOS, so did, Sigvald the Magnificent, and I just feel like Thanquol didn't, but he's so iconic and he's in such a crazy cool faction, I just don't get it. So apologies, it'll take a little longer since now I have just decided I just need to go back and read a bunch of old books. But regardless, I want to end this video like I end all of my videos by talking about why is this cool. Well, as we've talked about a few times, having the smallest of factions within their army have the largest amount of control and guiding them is really fun. Every one of their models, barring maybe the Night Runners, like really represents an immense amount of resources and power and political standing within the Skaven universe. Like every one of them matters. They also make fantastic characters for you to write your own stories. So if you're somebody who writes the lore for your army, having a Grey Seer character is fun because they can be whatever you need them to be. They exist anywhere they want in the power structure. Now, one question I'd like to ask the audience, though, and please leave your ideas in the comments down below, do assassin-type things tend to work in AOS? I know for the longest time, some units would like hide inside others, and you would have to like basically have them pop out at a certain time. I'm curious if you find that works. Are you getting a lot of use out of your Death Masters? Please tell me in the comments because I would love to hear it. It's such a cool idea, and like one of those things that when you see it and play against it in Vermintide, it immediately clicks as to how dangerous these things are, but I've always wondered if that translated to the tabletop version. Anyway, thank you all so much for hanging out with me and listening to this video. I'll catch you in my next Skaven lore video. Until then, happy wargaming.